r/AskReddit, soldiers of Reddit, what is a time you have yelled at a superior or drill sergeant? Why did you do it? I had a team leader that crossed a line. We were having a company BBQ with all of our families. When my wife and I were leaving, he stopped me and locked me up, parade dressed, right in front of my wife. He then proceeds to bitch at me over some petty ass shit that could have been covered in a text. I maintained my bearing in the moment. Barely. The next Monday, I came to work and pulled him aside. I made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that if he ever pulled that shit again, I'd knock his teeth through the back of his head. That yelled to a yelling match that the squad leader had to break up. After hearing the story, he gave us permission to take it to the wood line. That was not what the TL was expecting. He apologized and we never mentioned it again. Still don't like that dude. Retired German army guy here. Once we had to go to another barracks nearby by car. Because of a train we were too late. Right after we passed the guards, RCSM comes along, sees us and points at his watch, making an angry face. Since I didn't really like that guy, I opened my window and yelled, "Hey CSM, you got a new watch." Got yelled at by my platoon leader later that day. I'd have replied, "Yeah, just for you. Watch this hole grow into a mountain of dirt right beside it." He'll share a few stories from the army. Day 0 of basic training, we were all standing in front of the in-processing facility at Fort Leonard Wood. A lot of us had no idea what to expect, and the only instructions we were given were to stand on some dots painted on the concrete and wait for someone to tell us what to do. After a half hour, a female drill sergeant came out and started giving the welcome speech. She was quickly interrupted by a young recruit who started laughing loudly. "Did you hear me make a fucking joke, Private? What the hell are you laughing at? You're a woman." He replied between laughs. Everything went completely silent for about 3 seconds. I think we were all holding our breath. "What the fuck did you say to me, Private?" Immediately, 5 more drill sergeants teleported to the kid, stood as close as they possibly could, and all started screaming insults and conflicting commands at him. After a few minutes of the feeding frenzy, they led him away, screaming at him the whole time. I would have thought it was a soldier they planted in the formation to set an example, but he ended up in my company in basic training. He refused to talk about that night. Almost every story I have of yelling at a superior ends that way, with one exception. After my training, I became a combat medic and was deployed to Afghanistan. For half of the deployment, I was in an aid station that took in a lot of casualties. One day, we took in a very large number of casualties. All of our trauma beds were full, and every second counted. Our battalion commander, the boss of the boss of the boss of my boss, decided to come to the aid station to observe. When I needed to get more medical supplies, he happened to be standing in front of the shelves. I walked up to him and said, in a command voice, "Step aside, sir." Normally, a private ordering a lieutenant colonel to do anything is a very stupid move. In any other situation, I would have been heavily punished. But in an aid station with active treatment of combat casualties, the medical personnel are the highest authority. The commander didn't say anything, he just moved aside. "You have about 30 seconds to unfuck yourself starting 28 seconds ago." I don't know if that was an old saying amongst all of them, or he made it up on the spot, but goddamn did I almost fucking lose it. That is a good one. This is a long story, and I'm an airman, not a soldier, but I was working on the flight line in 2001. I was much younger then and a bit of a hothead. I was E4 and my supervisor was E6, TSGT. He had been on the jet for over 11 years and knew our systems inside and out. The only issue is he would push people around until they pushed back. You would earn his respect when you pushed back. It was just his style, and all of my feedback forms would come back as "does great work, needs to lead more." At one point we had a jet with a minor malfunction that was still flyable, but it would always get this right up. One day, no sort is scheduled, So I clear with my TSGT, shop supervisor and shift supervisor, that I'm going to work this jet. I check out my tools and start walking to the jet. TSGT intercepts me, tells me to go work on a jet in the hangar. I tell him I was told to work this jet. He says go to the hangar. I try to explain what I'm doing. He keeps telling me to shut up and go to the jet. I finally just tell him fine, whatever, I'll go to the stupid hangar. I head to the hangar, but there isn't any work for me. I explain what I'm there for, and they all look at me like I'm a new guy, so I go back to the TSGT and tell him what happened. He just shrugs me off and tells me to wait. No directions, no work, for about 2 hours. Now I'm really irritated and a bit of an asshole. Finally, TSGT comes up and tells me to go back and work the original jet. I tell him no, I'm comfortable here in the shop. He repeats the order, and I said it now. I had everything set to work the jet this morning, and you told me no, so I think I'm going to stay right here. Now he's mad and tells me to meet him behind the building. I stand up, taking my time, stretch, tell everyone I have to go, and I'll be back. Now TSGT is really mad and says XXXXXX, get your ass outside right now. We go behind the building and we, verbally, light into each other like two rabid dogs. He gets in my face and yells, who the fuck do you think you are? I get back in his face and yell, just who the fuck do you think you are? I'm trying to do my fucking job and you're treating me like a fucking newbie, and it gets really loud. Everyone in the building can hear everything we are saying. Finally someone comes out and says, hey, I hate to interrupt, but we have to clean up back here, so me and TSGT immediately stop. We stomp about 100 yards to another building and pick up where we left off. After about 5 minutes of yelling, we both stop, light up our cigarettes and sit down. He apologizes, says he shouldn't have reacted that way. I apologize and explain where I'm coming from. I explain that I know he's been on the jet for a long time, and I'm trying to learn, but he has to let me learn. We hash out things, and went to lunch at the chow hall. I had a whole new level of respect for him, and he treated me as an equal after that. It's hard to explain, but it was a pretty big moment for me. Looking back, I should have gotten paperwork and extra duty. I *SHOULD* have gotten in plenty of trouble, but I wasn't, and, to me, it speaks more to my TSGT and leadership than it does anything else. I'm in an exec leadership role in a squadron now, and I use this moment as a teaching tool for other NCOs. TL, Doctor, I was the smartest, and, fuck it, just read the story. One of my grandpa's stories that I've told before. Just after the Korean War, he was in a big convoy moving soldiers and AMP stuff across the US from one base to another. They stopped for lunch at some podunk burger place in some southern state. Only problem was about a quarter of the soldiers were black, and it was the South. Owner of the restaurant said the black troops weren't allowed inside, they'd have to eat in the trucks. Chicken shit officer should have packed everyone up and moved on to the next shithole town for lunch, but instead he went along with it. A couple hundred burgers probably made that restaurant's sales goal for the whole week. If the officer had played hardball, he probably could have forced the issue. Instead, the black soldiers had to eat in the parking lot like it was the 1800s again. My grandpa always said that not speaking up at that moment is one of his biggest regrets from his time in the military. I've been both the student and an instructor in the Canadian Forces. I understand that we differ a fair bit from Americans in this regard, but we're not even supposed to be yelling at the candidates. You can yell to communicate across distances or to make yourself heard, but the Hollywood style get up in someone's face and scream is not on. There's a few justifications for this that I won't go in depth on. More or less, that it doesn't build a good working relationship and runs afoul of anti-harassment policies. Besides, a good instructor can convey more meaning with a few quiet corrective words than a profanity-laden tirade at 110 dB. And AMP, #X200B. I will give you a case where I ended up yelling at a flag officer, but it wasn't in anger, just part of the job. I worked in the field artillery, and aiming those big guns isn't a matter of aiming a sight at the target. You probably can't see it directly. The sights are aimed at specific aiming points. If someone's standing between your sight and your aiming point, then you let them know with a yell of line. Field artillerymen will recognize this when they hear it, but visiting officers from other trades probably won't know what's up. So a couple yells by a young gunner like me, at the time, went unnoticed until my sergeant stepped in for me. Subscribe to AskReddit for more content.